Hi guys, welcome to Alt London Podcast. We're back again for another episode. This is, I don't know why I always say what episode it is, but this is episode 4, I believe.
It is episode 4, yes. Season 4.
Of season 4.
Yeah.
So we've got Afia, obviously we also have
Charlene, and we're just giving you content, by the way, guys. So we have another wonderful special guest today, and we like to, vary what we tell. We want to share good information with yourselves, and we want to make sure we can provide like a good variety of information. So we have my lovely auntie Rose, who is, I'm actually named after, so Auntie Rose, and actually tell us a bit about yourself. So yeah, Auntie Rose, or we're going to refer to her as Rose just because she's professional in this bag, so yeah, but she's my auntie. So Rose, do you want to introduce yourself?
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me. What a pleasure and opportunity. So well, where do I start? What would you like to know about me?
Yeah, so I mean, for context, Rose is a psychotherapist. I don't want to get it wrong, so do let us know your sort of professional title.
Okay, I'll go on. I'll take it for I'm a psychotherapist by profession. I'm an integrative counselling and pastoral psychotherapist. I work as a senior counsellor for Help for Heroes, which is a veterans charity.
Nice.
And yes, I've been with Help for Heroes for nearly 5 years, working with veterans.
Nice.
But overall, I've been in the field of psychotherapy for almost 2 decades. Now I've just given my age.
Crazy. Okay, cool. Nice.
Just giving away my age. Yeah.
We don't disclose ages.
We don't talk about ages. Before we get fully into that though, tell us 3 things, or Afia, do you want to take us over?
Yeah, tell us 3 random facts about yourself. Something that nobody knows.
Okay. One thing I would say is I can go for crazy walks.
Yes.
Where, I would step out to do a 30-minute walk, and then I would get lost in the woods. And then I'll just carry on walking, and then I would come out and I would have done something like 20 or more kilometers.
Wow, 20. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, keeping fit, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and another fact about me is sometimes I might be doing a simple brief research, and it's like going on one of those expedition where you don't know where you're going, and I would end up researching, and I would just get so lost into it that the rest of what's happening in life doesn't matter.
That's nice.
Yeah,
so you get really stuck into topics. And you like to reread. I think that's a good quality though.
Definitely.
I really love to, and it would be something as simple as, check out how to make ABCs. Maybe I'm cooking, and then that would end up whilst I'm still cooking and in the research. And it's so funny, or sometimes it's so good, you pause the research. And another fact about me that I think I really love is, especially when COVID started, I can dance by myself.
Nice.
You can dance by yourself?
I can dance by myself. And I can dance up and down the stairs. I can dance around the house. And you can just get those house chores done that you've been dreading to do.
Yeah.
That's a good way to get through it. No, I like that too.
That is really good. You got to find ways to entertain yourself, especially during this time.
You do.
We're almost a year in now, aren't we?
It's crazy.
Oh yeah,
it's crazy.
Especially when Jerusalem came out. Oh, I can dance to that song. I can wake up in the morning dancing to Jerusalem. It just get your day going. It gets your day really going.
And that's a good way. It's a good way to boost your mood as well, actually. And that's definitely something you can get into. later on down the line. But yeah, in general, that's nice to know. Like, nice facts about you. How would you say has lockdown been for you? Like, how have you been doing? How have you been dealing with it?
The lockdown for me, I honestly would say, has been a blessing.
Okay.
My life was really busy, really, really busy. You know, I was going from one project onto another. But in as much as it has been, because let's not forget that it has been challenging in one sense, having to make these quick changes in life. But in so doing, I have really enjoyed the lockdown.
Right.
I have had time to sit back and reflect. And I've really enjoyed my home.
Right. Yeah.
You know, where, you know, you're always out, you're off to work, and then you on to like your social life, and then you on to if you have to go on training, because my job took me all around the country, and sometimes I've had to travel abroad as well. You know, sometimes I get to work internationally as well.
Yeah.
And lockdown, I mean, one of my goals this year was in 2020 was not to travel because I was so ready to slow down.
Right.
And then COVID-19 happened, in as much as it's a challenging time for everybody. But I've been able to take the positive out of it, to just enjoy being home. The time I would have been driving to work in places. I've utilized that time to rest. Go ahead.
And you don't realize like how much time it actually takes out of your day just simply traveling to work. Like, that's a good, like, some people can take about a good couple of hours out of your day.
Yeah, commuting for
and
sure.
You just and like I think that's so important what you said about just slowing down, because like we're always just, especially in London, we're just go all the time. Like, even on the weekend we don't really slow down. So I think that's so important that we're just taking the time to ourselves and just taking time to reflect. Yeah, for sure.
No, I think that's an important one.
So we'll just go to the next question. So, like, talk to us about the impact of mental health that you've seen personally during this period. Like, that can be just like with people you know, or like maybe your clients. Are you seeing like that people are just really finding COVID-19 hard to deal with mentally?
I think when we talk about mental health in general, we have to really take a step back and bring it back to our well-being. Because when you talk about mental health, it's so broad that we sometimes miss it. And I think for me, what I would say, even working in this field with people who have mental illness, or who are just, due to changes with COVID, have been experiencing some difficulties with their mental well-being or psychological well-being, because there are different levels. So, for example, if you're talking about somebody who is engaging with the system in terms of getting support in mental health, who has been struggling, then for some of them it sort of like impacts it on another level.
Right.
But then we need to look at the collective and broad impact of our well-being.
Right.
Meaning, and what I mean by that is for everyday life, we are used to a certain structure, certain ways of doing things.
Yeah, that's true.
And when COVID came, it didn't kind of pre-warn us.
Right.
It just came. So I think it's very important to know that COVID has affected everyone one way or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
And for some people who had mental health, it's actually worked out well for them, because they didn't going out was the biggest challenge for them.
Oh, that's true.
They didn't want to be out in the public. So it kind of helped them to just stay in their safe zone.
Right.
You know, like some of the people I work with who struggle with, I mean, when you think about people with social anxiety, generalized anxiety, they struggle with going out, you know, being in public or engaging in social setting, you know, so for them, this is easy.
Right.
You know, I'm just staying in my corner. I'm just staying at home.
Right.
But let's look at the collective impact of
before
our
you do that
well-being.
Before you do that, I just want to say, but long term though, don't you think that would impact them really like quite
That's
badly
what I was
though.
gonna say.
Like-
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yes. It will long term. Yes, absolutely. Because whilst they're in isolation,
Yeah.
and it works for them because isolation is one of their ways of coping.
Right.
Yeah.
But in the long term, obviously, it builds up.
Right. And that's
So
so,
they're
yeah.
going to have to, yeah. And for some people when we work with them, they need to go out to be exposed to the fear and whatever, so what we call in terms of exposure therapy or behavioral changes. Some people would need to go out and do things like if they struggle going to the shops,
Right.
and then you want to start taking them, working with them to get out there. But then before we even get to that, we need to really go back to, when we think of mental health, we need to go back to basics.
Right. Okay.
And it is so key to go back to basics, because it's almost like you're saying you want a car to run, but there is no fuel in the tank.
Right. Right.
So when you talk about mental health, we have to look at mental health from the well-being perspectives. How do you survive on a day-to-day basis? Am I eating well? Am I sleeping well?
Yeah.
Because for you to be able to deal with your mental health, you have to have your basic resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So simple things like, what's my home environment like?
Yeah.
Can I wake up in the day and be able to do the basic things of life, like have some food to eat, have some water to drink, or think about in this COVID season, families who you have about 5 or 6 people living in a small apartment or flat.
Yeah.
You can tell I lived in America, I'm still saying apartment. So when you think of somebody, you may have a family who they have a whole house.
Yeah.
And they can have their space,
Yeah.
Then you have a family who maybe they're living in a 2-bedroom flat. And it's a very small flat. They don't have a garden, and they have children.
So much.
So they may not have had mental health issues before, but now they're faced with anxiety. So you talk about their well-being, their psychological well-being, so that's that collective impact.
So I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about focusing on your basic needs. I think that's also something that people have really been struggling with as well, just because when you're working, if you're working from home, so you're working from home, you're staying at home generally, all of your life is just merging into one.
Right.
Some people are finding it really hard to like wake up and say, okay, like this is, how am I going to separate home from work? Because you're working and you're working and living in your same space. That's a difficulty for one. And then 2, like knowing when to like take breaks, when to like eat properly, even like getting, because you're at home, you just want to be in your loungewear. Are people getting, some people are not getting up and changing their clothes, some people just staying in their loungewear all day, like not making the effort. So like it's really hard to like mentally be like, okay, cool, like I'm gonna go to work today, let me at least put on some work clothes, let me like, I don't know, whatever you do to like spruce yourself up, put on some makeup, do this or that. I think that's where like a lot of people are like having a difficulty. So would you say that people should continue to do their usual routine as what they usually do when they go to work, or what would you recommend there?
Very good question and very good point. This is so important, and it goes back to what I was saying about psychological well-being and that immediate change that we all had to embrace. I can use myself as a very example. We were all going, I'm working from home. I just have my PJ bottoms and put some nice top on. But then it does impact you psychologically and how you're processing your thinking, sort of like being in your mind. So yes, a very important point. One of the things we had to do, even within our work, was to have a structure whereby we were following the procedure, things the way you did things at work, but maybe trying to have a similar setup at home.
Right.
So it's all about having a routine, maintaining the routine. So waking up the same time you wake up to go to work, maybe using that time in the morning you would have been traveling to go to work, maybe to go to read something or go outside walking. So rather than driving to your place of work, you're walking.
Right.
Okay. And then making sure you have a designated spot in your home where that's your workstation.
Yeah.
So not and we also have to remember, not everybody would have a room, but maybe the kitchen table or somewhere where, you know, that's my work corner. So it separates the work environment from the rest of your home. Definitely, if you can, not in your bedroom.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say that's what I was dealing with, like, because you know, sometimes when you're more than one person working from home, then you know, it's difficult. Obviously, as we all, you know, said, we didn't plan for this. We didn't know it kind of was dropped in our lap, wasn't it? So you know, that's been something difficult dealing with, because, you know, if I'm on meetings and then the person I live with is on meetings, and we both obviously can't be on meetings in the same room, so then like I was working from bed, and then like I got an injury, because really it's actually like not good to be leaning on your arms, you know, for extended periods of time and things like that. So you know, I think it's so important to like try and carve out some sort of working space.
It's about creating that mindset. It's creating that mindset of, this is work time. And this is break time. You know, if you were used to preparing your lunch and taking your lunch to work, making sure that you have your lunch ready, because again, it goes back to what I was talking about, you know, that basic survival human needs. When you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we always start with the basic survival. You're going to need food, you're going to need sleep, you're going to need rest to give you a sound mind. Why do you need those things? Because it helps your body to function well. It helps the brain to function well. It helps you to think clearly. So if you're not planning your meals, you're not planning to get some night rest, you're not planning a designated space that's going to be your workstation so you can focus and think clearly, it then begins to impact on your psychological well-being. And then that impact of your well-being may then escalate to becoming a mental issue.
I was going to say,
not necessarily a diagnosable issue, but in a way that it may be impacting on you significantly, where your mood is dipping, or maybe you are on edge, you know, you're becoming anxious, because there's what we call collective anxiety that we're all expressing right now, nationally, or in a way globally, you know, because you're all waiting to know, what's Boris Johnson going to say,
I mean,
or if it's America, what's Biden going to say, when is the lockdown going to end, what does it mean for me, when can I go back to the shops, what do I need to get, I can't wait to go to meet my friends and go to dinner. And all of those is impacting on a key part of the body, our nervous system.
Right. I just want to ask you a question though. So one of the things you spoke about, one was obviously having like a clear structure to the day. So I think a lot of people have been struggling with like when to end the work day. I know that's something that I've been struggling with, you know, in my current employment. Like I'm like, like I could just do this, and then like this becomes something else, and becomes something else, and becomes something else, and before you know it, you're supposed to finish at 6 and it's like 7 o'clock. Like, do you have any kind of I guess, like, it's hard to say, because obviously sometimes, you know, it might be that you've got like a particular deadline or something like that, but, you know, do you have any sort of advice on how to maybe manage that a little bit better? Or
I think that goes, again, it goes a very good question, because it's not just with COVID. Some people struggled even when they were back in the office.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And I think that speaks to the word boundary.
Right.
You know, it speaks to the word boundary, and it's boundary for the self and boundary around others. And what do I mean by that? It's being able to have a routine, and with your routine, being able to set boundaries around your routine without feeling guilty about it. Because sometimes if we don't have a routine, we just do things, you know, and then, you know, it's okay, I'll do it another half hour. Procrastination comes in, and then you end up working late. Or sometimes you think, I'm at home, I can just continue.
Well, that's what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. A lot of people are like, I've got nothing else to do, so I may as well just do it, right? So like a lot of people are feeling that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, sorry, but it's just that I think that's a key point to like highlight, you know, because that, you know, I'm sure a lot of our listeners probably think that way, like, you know, and I hear it, I can't tell you how many times a day I hear that, like, it's cool because like I have nothing else to do anyway, because we can't go out, you know. So that's something I think a lot of people are actually struggling with, you know.
Well, it actually speaks to the issue of self-care.
Yeah.
And well-being.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, in order for me to have self-care and to care for myself and to look after my well-being, it means that I'm going to need to have a routine. You know, my morning routine, my lunchtime routine, my after work routine, my bedtime routine, because what tends to happen is if you don't have routine and you don't have a structure and you don't have, you know, like a loose plan of things that you can do, how are you going to occupy your time, finding things that you could do, you know, so that you enjoy even in the time, especially in the time of COVID, then what happens is you're using work to fill that gap.
It's true,
and
but
work
yeah,
may not. Yeah,
that's.
Yeah,
I was just going to say though, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but it's just something you keep saying things that are important, so I kind of want to highlight them again. But I just want to say something to the people that are not realizing that they're in that state though. To your point, so for example, there's people that are that are suffering, and maybe they're not putting themselves or making themselves a priority, and then it's like they're not realizing how badly they're impacted, like they're being impacted. Maybe they might live by themselves, so they don't really have anyone to kind of, you know, point that out to them, or you know. So I feel like there's a lot of that going on, you know, and I don't know how can you help someone, because, and I think it's so important that you're talking about routines, and it's actually speaking true to me because I'm someone who does struggle with routines quite a lot, but same. I really do struggle with routines. What I could say about routine is whether you live alone or you live with 10 people, routine is the one thing that helps us. And what it means is routine is just saying that have a simple plan for yourself. It's more especially if you live alone, because if you live with somebody, maybe you can turn and talk to that person. Right.
There is something we talk about that is, I'll give you this intervention that I use, and I use it a lot over COVID to help people, whether living alone or with other families. It's called the ACE. It's about, one, you've got to do something every single day, something as simple that you can achieve. So maybe, for example, waking up. Okay, I'm going to wake up at 7 o'clock. Let's imagine you're not even working, you're unfollowed, or you didn't have a job. And it makes it even the worst case scenario. I'm still going to wake up. I'm going to do some breakfast, as simple as it is, putting the toast on the bread in the toaster. And getting that to eat. I'm going to open my curtains and get some light in. I don't like making my bed, but you know what? When I make my bed, I'm actually moving my muscles.
Yeah, true.
So by doing that, I'm beginning to sort of like move my body, and that helps to relax any tension that's been in my body. So that's the A, something simple that you can achieve. And then the C is something to connect with somebody. So say, for example, you mentioned somebody living alone. Yeah. You know, so to intentionally, because the thing about routine is you have to be intentional about it. If not, it's not going to happen. Yeah. You know?
I understand that. So I understand that, but I just want to I want to I'll pick your brain because you're here. So but it's just because that people really struggle to get to that stage. So whilst I do appreciate and I hear what you're saying, and I think a lot of people also hear what you're saying as well, like I think a lot of people struggle where it's like, how do I get to a point, like if I've not been doing this for 25 years, let's say, right, speaking to the younger, like how do I get to a point where I can implement that to a way that's actually effective right now, you know? Do you understand what I'm saying?
So the way you get into it is not to think about tomorrow. It's not to think about lunchtime. You start with where you are. Simply like, okay, if you say I want to wake up in the morning at 8 o'clock and go down and or go to the kitchen or open the curtain, you got to start by doing that. The reality when it comes to well-being is all about action.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're gonna do it and it's gonna be perfect or you're gonna get it right. No, That's the first thing you need to get out of your mind. But to have a routine is the very basic you can do. And it could be thinking about it. It could be just saying to myself, okay, I'm going to wake up. And if you struggle with waking up, then do you have somebody that you can call to wake you up?
Right.
Most people have devices now where they can set their alarm. Right? So you set your alarm. So these are the simple basic things. It doesn't even go into mental health psychology. This is just your basic everyday survival. I'm going to get out of that bed even though I don't want to get out of it, because you know what?
Yeah.
Once I get out of the bed, then I'm going to be able to take the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
and then
so
once
true.
I take the next step, my mood is not going to be where I want it to be. And we don't expect our mood to be there. But the fact that we're doing something, then things will begin to change.
Right. And
so
I think that's
it's not
key.
going to happen without taking action.
Yeah. No, I think that's
so
key.
So going back to ACE is a model that you can use with anybody. They even use it with kids, and it works well with adults.
Right.
So the achieving goal could be simply getting up and getting out of bed and getting that slice of toast, because you know what? I need fuel in my body if I want to move around. My mood may be crap, but at least I'm moving around.
Right.
You know, but if my focus is on I want to feel better, but I'm not doing anything, then I'm not going to feel better.
Right. But I think it's taking that first step, though.
Yeah.
It's taking that first step.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot to take that first step. And I don't mean to. I think what it's saying is important, but I wanted to relate this because it kind of relates to our, I guess, next section, if you like, which is about therapists, because and I think I know what you're going to say about this, but obviously people think that in order to take that first step, they have to just contact a therapist and everything will be fine, right? So I wanted to sort of get your thoughts on that, like, do you think that sometimes people place too much responsibility on that, and when do you feel like is the best time, do you think that therapy is always the answer, I guess, is where to start off?
I think sometimes when people use the word therapy, for me, I ask, well, what is it, what's going on? I need to know what's going on before I can think about therapy, because again, going back to what we're saying, is that sometimes people are thinking therapy, I need to go to therapy to move, whereas it goes back to the basics. Whereas I can begin to deal with these basics, then I can notice how my mood begins to change. That when I'm down, if I do these things, my mood will be up, because the reality in life is your mood is not going to be up all the time.
Yeah,
and I think the key thing is about acknowledging that, and if you notice the language I'm using, crap, that's not my everyday language, but those are my therapy language. Yeah, because our mood can be shit and crap all the time. Let's let's get to the crux.
That's how we would say.
Let's get to it. Okay, I'm not going. When I wake up this morning, I didn't want to get out of bed,
right?
Because that's how I feel. But my feeling is not who I am,
right?
But once I got up and I was thinking, damn, the bin man is coming today, and I got to get that trash out.
Right.
And I was going down. And when I got outside, the wind blew my face. Boy, my mood was different.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is talking about my well-being.
Right.
So you notice how I move away from the word therapy.
Right. Yeah, no, you
because
do.
I need to deal with my well-being to even get me to therapy.
Right.
Because if not, I will go to therapy and I'm not therapy ready.
Right.
Yeah. Because I feel like, I'll speak on myself personally, because I personally go to therapy, but I think you have to get to a point where, like, not that you care about yourself, but you have to care about yourself essentially to go to therapy. You've got to be like, look, there's an issue here. I want to do better for myself, therefore I'm going to go to therapy. So like you say, until you get to that point where you're like, okay, I care about my well-being, I care about being better, then that's when you can go to therapy. Until before then, like, it's so difficult to even get to that point. So I totally agree.
And it's not to be mistaken with,
and that's a very good point. And let me say something about therapy as well, and this is something I have learned in my involvement in this field. therapy is something where when people come to me, the first thing I tell them is, you are the expert of your experience. I am the expert of my knowledge.
Right.
So therapy is not gonna work. Therapy is not gonna work if you think when you come to therapy, therapy is going to fix things for you.
Yeah.
Because the reality is, and this is so important, the reality is some of the issues we come to therapy with are things that can, in fact, therapy don't fix anything, but it helps us to get a different perspective,
right?
And then we learn ways of dealing with them.
Yes.
Right.
So that if I was in a situation where maybe I'm triggered or somebody says something or I'm reminded by that past event, it's not gonna treat me. I understand myself, my inner self well enough, and I am emotionally secured and emotionally safe within myself that I can deal with this situation without tripping up. The thing, what it is about when we talk about therapy is basically saying that I've had experiences in life where things have happened to me that were so upsetting, and and my emotions were all over the place, and sometimes I can't handle my emotions.
Right.
And when I come to therapy to gain perspectives of how I'm able to mentalize and process this stuff. Or make the decision to pack them because they're not even worth me going back to talk about them, because I know, like they say, you can't gather spilled grape juice.
Right.
So I'm gonna accept that this is what's happened, and now moving forward is, if that event makes me feel anxious, I want to work on the anxiety. If it makes me feel sad, I want to work on the sadness. So more or less, I'm working on the effect, how that event affected me. I'm working on the effect, but not the event itself.
It's so true, because I'll speak for myself as well. I also go to therapy, and like that's what I've been working on a lot. Like these, I guess, like somewhat repeated behaviors have happened over the course of my life so far, and every time, like identifying the first time it happened to me, and then the most recent time it happened to me, and how my behavior sort of responding to those events, what that has been, and how it's triggered me. That's I've been learning on how to manage it so that I'm not so triggered, or that I'm not so affected, and literally exactly as you say.
So it's managing your inner self.
Exactly, and that's what I found it to be most helpful for. But as you say, I mean, for me personally, it's interesting because I feel like I went because I wanted to feel better about certain things. At the same time, I feel like I also went at a time where I was quote unquote in somewhat of a mental crisis, to be honest with you, because a really bad thing had happened to me. So and I feel like it was still the right time to do that. And it's important
that you acknowledge. And I think it's also important that you have that space to talk about the things that have happened to you and how you feel about it, and be able to validate those emotions, but not get caught up in them.
Right.
So you can see that this has happened. Yes, it's happened, and this is how it made me feel, and I have thoughts about it. So when I think about it, I'm gonna say, I noticed that. I know this has happened to me. It wasn't pleasant. It wasn't nice. But I'm not gonna get caught up in it, because it's the getting caught up in it when we're thinking about it all the time, and then we're going back there. And then what it does is, and this is a whole other topic, it does have an impact on our physiology and biology.
Right.
So not just in our cognition, because when you talk about therapy, there is what you think about the cognitive aspects of it. There is the biology as well, how it affects, the impact it has on our body. And a lot of what people tend to struggle with is those emotions.
Right.
They're actually stored in the body.
Right.
So when you're triggered, it's not just a thought, but when you trigger, like when you feel anxious, it's a physical reaction, isn't it? Sensation.
Right.
So it's in your body.
Right.
And that's where you sometimes what happens is you're like shaking. Like when I was waiting to talk to you guys, I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do?
Well,
I was having my own anxiety as well. But it's normal.
I hope you've relaxed now.
no, I'm relaxed, but it's normal, and it's very important to be able to say, well, I feel anxious. I know there's a lot of questions. I'm just going to be myself, but it is quite normal for us to feel anxiety, to experience anxiety. It's what is not normal is when it continues to build up,
right,
to the point that we're not able to handle it.
And
anxiety, fear, guilt, all of those are emotions that are normal, because it's sort of like an alarm bell, like a smoke alarm saying something is not right here.
Right.
So I pay attention to it, and I say, yeah, it looks like something is not right. So I need to pay attention to it. But if I don't pay attention to it, then I avoid it, and then it builds up, and then my emotion is kind of, escalating, increasing my anxiety and all of that. That's when it becomes out of control.
No, fair enough. I was going to say, you go for it.
I was going to say, just like, we'll kind of relate to it, but not related to that. But like, what do you do when it's not just you who has the issue, but it's actually someone you're living with, or maybe family? So like, just your thoughts on like couples therapy, or like even family therapy, because I know that's a thing as well. So like, when should people go about that? Because I know some people who are even in like healthy relationships, they still go to like couples therapy, for example, just for the sake of like, healthy communication. So do you recommend that? Like, what are your thoughts on couples therapy or family therapy?
Yeah.
Couple therapy is good. As a matter of fact, I do work in that field as well, and with families as well. I have experience in those. It goes back to, again, I think the first place you need to go back is to yourself. You begin to work with yourself, because there's something that we call mirror effect and mirror neurons, which is about the brain. I won't go into all that big words. But basically what it is when people are behaving in certain ways, and it triggers us, it triggers something in me. That's okay when I'm triggered. But the question is, when I'm triggered, how do I respond? How do I deal with it? Do I react to what they have said or done, or do I respond? Bearing in mind that what they may be doing may be really hurtful and painful.
Right.
But the first point of action is for me to become aware that what they've said is painful, is hurtful, and then taking simple steps like, you know what, I'm not going to react to what they're saying. Because a lot of times what we tend to do, whether it's a family member or you are in a relationship with someone, it's about, somebody says something, I'm not gonna put up with that. How dare you speak to me like that? Who do you think you are? So, your defensive self comes up and out.
Right.
And when you're talking to somebody who is well balanced emotionally, they may look at that other person and just say, it's okay. It's not saying that the behavior is okay, but they're saying to themselves inside that it's okay. To yourself. In other words, you're trying to calm yourself to say, I see that person is really upset, and that's okay.
Right.
I'm not gonna dance with that person. So you're taking yourself out of the tango, so that you don't, because their behavior can really trigger you to escalate if you don't intervene at that point. So it's not about engaging and trying to figure out what they're doing or what they're not doing, because by doing that you become stimulated. And then you get into the dance, whereas the first thing you need to do, because it goes back to what we were saying before about those basic grounding skills for yourself.
Right.
Right. If you have that discipline within yourself and inside yourself, people would say things that are so hurtful to you, and you will just be sitting there smiling to them. It doesn't mean they're right, but it just means that you're resilient enough to deal with to address difficulties without losing your cool.
I feel like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like they were like, to a certain extent though, what if you're continually dealing with that behavior? I mean, I guess, that might be... And
then you go to therapy. I'm not saying don't go to therapy, but a lot of times it's like, it's about how you begin to look after again, I go to the word well-being.
Right.
So it's how you look after your well-being, and then probably, people say go to therapy, but I want to say something. You could do what we call self-therapy.
Right.
And to start, because sometimes people go to therapy, they're not therapy ready.
What are you going to say,
Because
Fia?
when you get to therapy,
I feel like,
yeah.
Fia, you're going to say something?
So I was just going to say, so you're saying that it's like a combination of like, number one, like sometimes what people are reacting to is not necessarily me. It may be their own inner issues that they're dealing with. So like maybe I shouldn't take it personally. But at the same time,
absolutely,
maybe because what if your behavior is what's triggering that person and they don't really know how to express that? Because you could just be doing something unintentionally and like, that person may not have the words or like whatever to say that in a proper way without exploding, and then you're just sort of like, like it's their own problem, like, do you know what I mean? So how do you, I think for me that would be like when you'd probably want to go to therapy, if you're not understanding why the other person's reacting that way, if you're not getting like how your actions are affecting that person sort of thing, rather than just being like, it's their thing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And this is where I go back to what we call bibliotherapy, because so you can read, if so, for example, you're living with somebody and you guys are not talking, you're not communicating well, and you're trying to talk to that person, it's just not happening.
Yeah.
And then you decide to go to therapy. But before you go to therapy, because even when you come to therapy, there's got to be some decorum in the therapy room,
right,
that will not be tolerated.
Right. Yeah.
And that goes back to, it goes back to those basic needs, because, in terms of how are you, because let's forget about the other person and their behavior. Let's focus on you, the individual. When that person is having their own issues, how are you managing yourself?
Right.
Because the way you might manage yourself will impact the interaction as well. Like they say, It takes two to tango.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't mean their behavior is right. It's just that you're not adding petrol to fire.
Right.
No, that makes sense.
And
definitely,
So there's couples therapy. There is family therapy. These are all tools that are really useful. But in my time, what I've realized is people come to therapy and they're not ready. And then they say therapy is not working, because when you come to therapy, you have to do the work.
Exactly that.
You have to. I tell my clients now from day one, I can give you all the information, but if you don't do the work, it's not happening. So I don't want you to waste your money.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't want you to waste your money, because it could be something as simple as go and think about what we talk about, reflect on it, and take one or two things you can put into action. Because if there is no action, that is not good. A behavioral change comes by doing something.
Right.
Even as small as telling myself, my partner is abusive. It's okay. I don't have to respond. I don't have to answer. Or I'm going to take the step of, when it starts going off, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to step out the door. Or there are times when people are not able to do that. So they know they have to have somebody they can call or message, but there are little things that you need to do. Because what my experience is, people look at the end result, the end outcome, the final end of the journey they want to be, but they don't think about how they're going to take steps.
No, makes sense.
Imagine, you're looking at the mountain top, but you don't know how to start climbing the ladder from the bottom to the next one, and then to the next one. A baby step. So that's why I don't even use the word therapy now. Yeah. I honestly don't use the word therapy. When you come to therapy, we're having a conversation.
Yeah.
Right. Because I feel like sometimes, like with it, you sort of, the answers, but it's just that person is sort of getting out, like pulling it out of you. Because like I feel like with life and like let's say depression or whatever tells you so many negative things. People throw so many negative things at you, and maybe you already know these good things about yourself, but because of life impacts that so much, you forget these things. So going to like talk to someone, have a conversation with someone, you're able to pull these things back out and able to build yourself back up back up
You
again.
get perspectives. Yeah.
So like with that said though, like I've heard of so many experiences where people have gone to therapists and it's just not working out. I've heard of some therapists like gaslighting their clients. Like a friend of mine has like been through a bad experience with that, like, you know, just making backhanded comments about stuff. Like when would you say is a time to walk away and find somebody else when it's just not working? Like what are the red flags would you say with a therapist?
The thing with when you go to counseling is the first stage of counseling is building rapport.
Building rapport, very important.
You've got to be able to come and talk, because therapy is the one place where you're able to talk about anything, no matter how difficult. The only thing we will tell you can't talk about is things about if you are threatening to kill someone or you kill yourself. I have to report that. But anything else, you can talk confidentially.
Right.
You know? So if you're not building that rapport, that's one red flag. And also going to therapy goes back to part of what I was saying, doing your research, you know, to sort of like try to get to know a little bit about the individual, have questions to ask when you go, ask them questions about what's your way of working, what type of therapy do you do? You know, I give you a client back then in my private practice that came to me and said she does not want psychodynamics kind of counseling. I went, okay. I said, what kind of counseling do you want? She says, I want action. She said, I've been in
How can you
she says, I've been in counseling. She said, I've been in counseling for some time and it's just not getting anywhere. And she came and saw me, and within a year, she was back in relationship, talking to people that she didn't talk to before. She was doing things that she didn't do before, because we were able to talk about what she was looking for, what kind of counseling she would work for her. But I can say again, I've had others who have come and they were not therapy ready, and no matter what I tried to do, they were just not therapy ready. And they got all the information, but they did not make the changes that they would have liked to make.
So maybe that's a red flag.
But the first thing is
so maybe that's a red flag is if a therapist doesn't identify that like within you, like, because like as you say, you don't want to be taking someone's money and there not be any kind of work happening or anything like that. So maybe the red flag is like, you know, if a therapist is just kind of coasting along or not really doing much, and you know, I think maybe that could be.
Some people sometimes want to come and talk. So this is why your therapy goals should clearly mark that. You have some people who just wants to come and talk. You know, so that's like a person center. They just want to talk and you listen, and that's it. You have other people who come in, like the way I work integratively. We do collaboration work. You know, I give you homework. There are times when you come in, I can see all you want to do is offload. So I'm not even gonna bother you about how did it go with the last session or things like that. So you have that time of offloading. So there's different dynamics. So this is why it goes back to the first thing is rapport, because the rapport would help you for you to connect. Because the therapy is that person you want to connect with, that you come to and you can talk about things.
Exactly.
You know, and if the therapy is not working, if you have that rapport, because as you review the goals for therapy, you'll be able to see, and any good counselor will tell you that we've been meeting for this long. These are your goals. How do you think you're doing with your goals? Do you think you're making the changes that you wanted? Is this working for you or not?
Right.
So you have regular review in therapy as well. Any good counselor or therapist will do that. You know, if they're not doing that, that would be a red flag.
Red flag.
You know, because
really
the responsibility, it's not just on the therapist, it's on the client as well.
I was just going to say that, because I guess the therapist can only work with what you're giving them, because if you're just coming to a session and you're not saying anything, and it's like
Exactly. Oh, I tell my clients that. I said, I'm here, I'm listening, and please, if I'm doing anything that's not working for you, feel free to tell me. I will not be offended.
That's good.
That's how I work.
That's good.
I'm not perfect as a therapist. Therapists do make mistakes, you know, or I may be using an approach that doesn't work for you. and then let's try something else.
Yeah.
You know,
really
it
good.
doesn't mean that approach or that intervention is not a good one, but it may just not be the best one for you.
Yeah, no.
So, you know,
No, that's
like
good.
you guys must have heard about mindfulness a lot, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. For example, the population I work with in my daytime job, for the most of them, the word mindfulness don't go. So I have to find another word that will mean the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they engage. But if I
Yeah.
use the word mindfulness, I
Yeah.
don't do that mindfulness thing.
Yeah.
But I just use a different explanation, and they're doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, no. I was going to say, so I'm going to kind of integrate these two things. So obviously we know that, and I think it's actually improving a little bit, but of course in the Black community, so yeah, here at Alt London, we want to focus on empowering and improving and helping Black people. So as we know, in the Black community, you know, it's actually quite sad to say that therapy is still kind of taboo. And, you know, that can be, you know, for a number of reasons. One, because, you know, we're taught to be strong and you know, that we don't need it, and, you know, like it sort of looks down upon. And also, though, this could be to do with like financials as well. So, of course, you know, in terms of the population of Black people in the UK, you know, a lot of people are, you know, sort of earning under the minimum wage and literally just can't afford it. And obviously you do have the NHS, but I can tell you from my experience, like unless you're kind of like, you know, at serious risk of yourself, like they're not really trying to give you a therapist. They'll probably just give you like online CBT like sessions, like so cognitive behavioral therapy sessions, but like they won't offer you someone to talk to unless you're like really at risk. So I just wanted to understand from your perspective, like, one, you know, what can we do to sort of help raise awareness within the Black community, and, you know, sort of, you know, help that. And two, you know, is there sort of any sort of resources that can be available for people that might not be financially able to afford a therapist, or, you know, is there places where you can get help to afford things like mental health support? Yeah, it's quite a loaded question.
No. So let's take the first question, which was about Black people and counseling. You know, the African community. That's a very, very good question. And I think that it's still, when you look at, we've come a long way in terms of accessing support for mental health, and or not just accessing support, but even coming to terms with the idea that I am struggling, you know, because we know, like you guys said, we were raised up to be strong and resilient. You don't talk about the emotional stuff, you being weak, right? What's wrong with you, you know? So even if you were struggling with your schoolwork, you probably get told off for not doing well. You're not studying hard. You're not putting the effort in, rather than sitting down and helping you try to understand what's going on, what are the difficulties, get to the root cause of it. Whether it's, okay, you go to lesson, make sure you come from school, go to lesson, go to do that, go, you know, and all of that. Now, we do know that, you know, people have different learning styles, people have different personalities when it comes to learning. So there could be various reasons, but our culture says you must be a doctor, you must be a lawyer, an accountant, an economist. Those are the recognizable status quo, right? So you're struggling inside, you don't talk about it. Well, like I said, we've come a long way. We have a long way to go.
But what do you think we can
do?
But so just on that point though, how can we continue to raise awareness within the Black community? Obviously, I want to shout out to my Caribbeans as well, because they also deal just, you know, pretty much the same thing. But you know, yeah, what do we do? I feel like for me, you know, in a position where I, you know, attend therapy, I'm shouting it to everyone, not in like a irresponsible way, but sort of saying, you know, this is helping me. So just sort of like trying to make it seem a bit more normal. But do you think that's what we need to do?
More
like,
accessible.
yeah, exactly, more accessible. Do you think that's what we need to do?
I think we just need to do more of what we're doing,
right?
Which is talk about it.
Right.
Definitely. And I think that's the difference.
Sometimes just talking about it sometimes just talking about it, it's like a rucksack off your shoulder. it takes more energy and more effort to hide, to keep it inside, to suppress things. Being able to talk about it, and so for example, you two, where if you're struggling, you're able to talk to one another. And through talking about it, one of you might say, maybe I fear to Charlene, to say, well, have you thought about talking to somebody? That's the start, because what it means is you're validating each other to say, yes, I see you struggle here. You're not saying, oh, you're weak. Why don't you go and do this, go and do that? No, you're saying, oh, I see you struggling here. Do you think maybe you might need to talk to the right person?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that is that basic support. I really like to take things back to basics. Because sometimes we're looking at the top of the mountain when we have not taken the first step towards climbing up the mountain. So it's that simple. Even when we sit in our family, sometimes when somebody is saying things that we don't agree on, but to just listen and to just say, okay, it's okay.
I agree.
Because then what it means is we're beginning to listen to one another. And then you might say, I don't know how to help you, but maybe we might need to look outside, maybe look professionally to see, or sometimes maybe we can just need to research on YouTube, because there's a lot of available resources out there now on the internet. We are so blessed in this time period compared back 20 years back or our parents' time, where you can go online and get so much. There's a lot of self-directed, self-guided therapy there that you can use as well, just to begin to help you where you are. There's something we call social support network. Having people within your social support network, a good friend that can listen to, not trying to advise them, not trying to tell them what to do, but somebody that can just listen.
Yeah.
And that speaks nicely actually to the other question. Afia, I feel like you were going to say something. I don't know if you wanted to interject.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think that's just something that's what our generation and the younger generation are trying to do now, is have those open conversations about mental health and normalizing it. So I feel like now more than ever, people are saying like, oh, actually, I've been depressed. Oh, actually, I suffer with anxiety, like all these sorts of conversations. And it was interesting because I was talking to my mum the other day about starting therapy, and she was like quite surprised. But then like she really warmed to the conversation. I was like, have you ever thought about doing it? She was like, oh, like, no, not really. But, like she was like sort of more open to the idea than I think she ever would be. And I think like talking to our parents as well, because our parents, like, I don't think they were raised like that. It was just sort of like, okay, something bad happens, you get on with it. Yeah, you get on with it, innit? But like having that conversation with my mum was like, yeah, like, really like maybe something you should think about. I think it was just good to open that to her and say like, look, you can have that as well. Maybe you haven't had that back in your 20 years ago, but like it's still open to you now, sort of thing. So,
it's the same thing for me. Like when I was talking to my mum about it, she was also, sort of quite taken aback, but was just like, like was kind of warm to it. And I said, I really think you need it too. Not because she's like bad or anything, just because like, naturally, like as black people, we've been through so much, not to talk about people's specific issues. I'm not talking about like familial things, or I'm talking about as black people in a country, which is not built for us, where we've had to deal with so much adversity on that level alone. I feel like it would be beneficial for all black people to have someone to speak with, whether it be a therapist or not, but just someone to speak with,
and something Afia said that's so important, which we do now as well, is to normalize it. Depression, I think back then they used to think if you're depressed or you're anxious, especially in the church.
Yes.
In the church. Yes. They think something is wrong with you, you're crazy, and you're not. It's normal to be depressed. If I was hoping, if I take my exam and I don't pass, I will be depressed.
For real.
If I attended a job interview and then I was not successful, I'll be depressed. But I'm depressed momentarily. It's just that I feel sad, I feel that down. But then I come out of it and then I continue.
Yeah.
So depression, anxiety, these are just normal emotions that are part of our DNA, that is inbuilt in us, that God has given us, an alarm bell in us. but it is whether we just get hooked onto it and sit with it and don't acknowledge that, I really wanted that job. I didn't get it. I was so sad I didn't get it, but it's okay. It's okay. And then I'll learn and move on to the next one.
No, definitely. I want to touch on, you kind of started talking about this, and obviously this is the second part of my question, which was about things that people can do who might not have, sort of money to spend on, mental health support. You kind of already said about, things like YouTube videos where you can kind of almost self-therapize. I mean, what other things would you say? Would you say that's kind of one of the main things, or do you know of any other places where you might be able to sort of get support if you feel like you need it, but you're unable to afford it?
If you can't afford therapy, the best place to go to start with is your GP.
Okay.
They have a duty of care that if you're feeling depressed and you can't afford it, you go to your GP and they will refer you to the NHS. Yes, given that the NHS is mostly CBT, they do. So if the case is complex, they would refer you to the complex mental health team, and there may be a wait list. But the NHS also does like different types of groups, or they have self-guided work that you can do online. There's a lot of digital therapy going on that you can do online, especially nowadays where with technology you can actually go through this thing from the comfort of your home, and then there are groups that you can form. But the most important thing I say to people is you've got to be able to take that first step, which is to go to your GP, go online, look for online resources. You can read things to educate you and give you perspective about what you're going through, understanding your condition, so that if you go to therapy and the therapist is talking nonsense, you will know.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah, if they're pulling a fast one, you will know. But the first point, of course, even now with the clients I work with, I always refer them back to their GPs. Your GP is your primary care, and they're the first point of call. They would make a referral, and whilst you're on that referral waiting list, you just keep calling on your GP.
Yeah.
Don't let them get away with it.
Yeah.
And I think this is a topic that is really important for us Black people as well, because sometimes, and not just Black people, just BME, whatever you call it, minorities, and you can tell after the George Floyd issue and the coronavirus, it's something that's come out in the open, how minorities, the inequality when it comes to even the healthcare system.
Right.
Especially in the healthcare
system. And I think,
right.
Yes. And I think this is where it goes back to what I said in the beginning. If you can be, just try to keep your focus, keep yourself grounded. Yes, it's upsetting. Yes, it's not nice. Yes, I feel like I'm being treated unfairly, but just keep asking the question that this is what I need. This is my struggle. You are my GP. You are my primary care, and this is the support I need. And just keep your goal. They will get tired, and then they will pay attention by referring you. Yeah. Call 111. Yeah.
Just keep
because what happens is we tend to shy away because I'm Black, because I'm this. Don't let your Blackness get in the way.
Right.
That's real.
Of what the support you should get.
That's real.
Yes, it's not easy, and that's why it goes back into the psychological aspect. Yes, it's not easy. Able to say to yourself, gosh, it's not easy. They always treat me. I feel like they treat me differently. I feel like they don't give me the support that I need, but don't stop asking.
No.
Because when you stop asking, it's when you stop getting the support. And then you have to go and pay outside, or you may not even have the money.
Right.
And then you end up struggling in silence.
Right. Yeah, no, we can't keep doing that, Black people. No, we can't.
No.
I mean, for me, like that is
and we need to speak up. We need to speak up, but we need to be assertive.
We do need to be assertive
and not aggressive.
Well, I mean, that's a whole other conversation made for another day, because my assertiveness might come across as aggression when it's not. you know. So I just think that I do think we need to stand our ground and be strong. Obviously we need to be polite and courteous, and as you say, assertive is probably the best word to use to describe it or to characterize it. But at the same time, we also need our counterparts in the white community specifically to not immediately be on the defense. I don't feel like we should have to tailor ourselves specifically because, you know, we know that people are going to be immediately offended by the way we speak just because of who we are. Like that's got to change, you know. But unfortunately we are in that position right now where we're still kind of having to do that. As you referenced, you know, the situation last year with Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the rest of, you know, the people who have sadly been murdered, there seems to be a bit more discussions surrounding like white fragility and like, you know, microaggressions and things like that. But obviously it's still, you know, very much a work in progress, and, you know, we're still yet to really seal the real sort of like outcomes to that work. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. For me, I feel like this is kind of a good way
it's really important, because if you don't speak up, then they're not going to hear you.
Exactly.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Cool. I think. Do you have any more questions, Afia?
No. I was gonna say, I think that's like a good way to like wrap it up, because I think we've like discussed everything and it's quite helpful. And I would say, like, as well, just to like add on to what you said, Rose, about, you know, pestering your doctor. If you do have the finances to get it, because sometimes you can be on the waiting list for a long time. I have heard of people being for like 2 years on the NHS. There are resources online. I think I think it's something called Psychology Today.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like Psychology Today is something that I've seen, and also there's a space called Talkspace, and I think they were currently offering £100 off when you join. So I mean, it's kind of pricey, but if you have got the finances to do it, what you can do is you can select your therapist. So me specifically, I wanted specifically a black woman, so that's what I got. So with Talkspace, you can go through that. You can they have little videos, you can just see what they do and like sort of get a vibe and see if you would get along with them. So that's something I would personally recommend as well, people trying out if you have got the money to do.
You got you can go to Get Self Help as well.
Yes,
Get selfhelp.co.uk. Nice. They have different forms you can use there. You have Psychology Today, you have Counseling Directory, you have the BACP, the BABCP. If you're Christian, you can go to the Association of Christian Counseling.
And there's the Black and Asian Therapy Network as well, which is where I found my therapist. But yeah, no, I think...
And then the Counseling Directory as well. If you go into Counseling Directory and you put your postcode, they will bring you all the therapists in your area. You can read their profile, what they do, their experiences. For some reason, I'm not there. I decided to take myself off there for now. But I have a full-time job anyway, so and a small part-time,
I was going to say, where can they find you?
I was just going to say that as well,
Like, where can people find you? Do you have any social media that you'd like to highlight, or a website or anything like that?
So what said I again? Working at home?
No, I said, where can people find you? Like, do you have any social media or a website where people can sort of see,
contact you?
Yeah, contact you.
Yeah, I have my website, Rose80 counselingtherapy.com.
Nice.
If you go to www.rose80counselingtherapy.com.
Okay, great.
Perfect. That's amazing. And I just wanted to just add on that, just say, like, you know, if anyone's listening and they are struggling, like, as we've spoken about, like, please reach out for help. You know, like, I'm hoping that people have like good friends in their life that they can like speak to, or if they don't want to do that, they can recognize that, you know, something needs to change, and that, you know, I think it's, first of all, like, it's just amazing that you've recognized that you do need help. That is the first and the biggest step. It's so hard to admit that to yourself. So like, once you've done that, well done. And then the next steps will be reaching out and getting therapy, or however you decide to deal with it. So like, well done for everyone for making it for a year of coronavirus, because it's been difficult. It's been difficult. And thank you so much, Rose, for coming on as well.
Thank you so much.
So helpful. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But guys,
thank you for having me once again.
No, of course. I mean, we're waiting for your podcast to come out, so, you know, let us know about that.
100%.
soon, yeah.
And so, guys, we've got a few things coming up for you next week. So,
Yes.
like, look out for our social
Look
medias
out.
next week. We've got a big announcement coming.
We do.
But yeah, thank you so much for listening. This is All London Podcast. We will see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.